Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Mark Venables, editor of the Manufacturing Technology Brief, Manufacturing Today's dedicated newsletter and online platform that covers the technologies reshaping modern manufacturing. So before we begin, I'd like to briefly mention the Manufacturing Data Summit UK that takes place in London on the 6th of October. The summit brings together manufacturing leaders to explore how data, analytics and AI can deliver measurable improvements across operations. The agenda examines everything from data quality and governance to digital twins, predictive maintenance, agentic AI, and the challenge of scaling successful projects across the enterprise, which I'm sure we'll touch on today. It's designed to be a practical, candid discussion about what is working and what is holding manufacturers back. So that's out of the way. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, how AI is transforming manufacturing operations from engineering to revenue execution. Today, we'll be looking beyond the excitement surrounding AI to examine how it is being applied across real manufacturing operations. We'll explore why so many projects remain trapped at the pilot stage, how AI can connect fragmented operations and commercial workflows, and what manufacturers should realistically expect from the next phase of adoption. Before we begin, the boring bit, a little bit of housekeeping. We'll be taking questions from the audience throughout the webinar. So please feel free to submit yours using the chat function on the screen. It's a little bubble on the right-hand side, the little speech bubble. Just click on that in Q&A, pop your question in there, and we'll bring as many of these questions as possible into the conversation. We'll also be conducting several polls during the webinar. They'll come up on screen, but again, you can enter your answers on there. I'll introduce each one as we reach it, and your responses will help us understand the experiences and priorities of the audience. So that's enough from me. Let me ask my speakers to introduce themselves. So first, Praveen, I'll come to you. A few words about yourself and your...
Sure, Mark. Just a quick check, though. I see a comment on the chat. Mark says something about... Oh, did we lose Mark? Okay. Yeah, Mark, there was a comment on the chat. I was wondering if there was some challenge for the audience, but it looks like it's all right. So yeah, thanks for having all of us. And I'm Praveen Kombial, and I lead the global market function for in sales and solution for a company called Infosys EdgeVerve. We're very happy to be here and bring this group together. We are a platform and product subsidiary in the AI and automation space of the larger Infosys Corporation. And our charter is about taking world-class platforms to the market. We work across the world with many large and mid-tier enterprises in the manufacturing space, and would love to share some war stories about how people are really engaging and adopting AI and what success stories and what watch areas are emerging. So happy to be here, Mark.
Thank you. Heather, now you. Can you introduce yourself and your company, please?
Sure. My name is Heather Urbanek, and I am the product leader for our AI team at Corning. Corning Incorporated is a material science and specialty glass company. We develop products like displays for televisions, monitors, mobile devices, Gorilla Glass, and optical fiber for connectivity solutions. So we're really we're an innovation company that focuses on advanced glass, ceramics, and optical materials.
Thank you. And finally, Mohit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mohit Ahuja. I am currently working as a strategy and transformation leader with Caterpillar. My role spans across end-to-end supply chain transformation, from reshoring to nearshoring, as well as building new systems, including AI strategy for long-term visibility and enhancement towards supply chain resilience. So happy to be here and looking forward to having a great discussion with this group.
Thank you, Mohit, and welcome to all. So before we move into the discussion, let's begin by finding out where our audience currently stands on AI adoption. So our first poll should be appearing on the screen very soon. So if you can give me your answers, but the question's fairly easy. How far has your organization progressed in operationalizing AI across manufacturing operations? So you can put your answers in the chat function, and we'll get the results soon. So let's start by establishing how much progress the industry has made, Praveen. So I'll start with you, please. So how much progress have manufacturers really made in operationalize AI across manufacturing operations? And why are so many organizations still struggling to move beyond isolated pilots?
Yeah, look, I think very broadly speaking, well, whenever there is new technology, the manufacturing industry we find has been a fast follower. They're circumspect about what's needed to be done, what's really required, because by charter, what they do is building out products to the market. So they've been great fast followers, and we're seeing the same pattern follow on with the AI technology adoption as well. We're starting to see customers really go beyond the automation landscape to look at how AI can help drive more shared services optimization. That's definitely out there. We're starting to see some PLM work. We're starting to see some revenue generating on the front end in the order cycles and fulfillment cycles, and of course the entire supply chain inventory views, etc. So clearly, manufacturing is standing up to its fast follower strategy. But I think what we find is of interest is the challenge. The world's really so excited about AI, but a lot of the conversation is about the technology, the models, the frontier companies, etc. But the hard work of enabling and adopting AI in an enterprise, in a manufacturing enterprise, is the context of the enterprise. What is the context of an enterprise? It's its data, its applications, its ERPs, its processes, its flows. So unless you bring AI into its context, you don't unlock value. And so we do find a lot of organizations who have not seen it this way, um, be stuck in POCs that have been going on for weeks and months without much going into production. So we'd like to connect the dots. That's what our platform and our company is doing a bit more, but I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
And I'm sure we'll get onto it later on, Praveen, but it almost comes down to no data governance, no AI, because you can't just put AI onto bad data, can you?
No, that's not going to work for the long term.
Yeah. Heather, your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I would agree with Praveen. We manufacturing tends to be a follower, letting kind of some of those technology firms lead the way. I think for a lot of manufacturing companies, one of the biggest issues is that we have many different manufacturing facilities. And so when you're building these different use cases for these facilities, you tend to build them specifically for that plant. And then as you're building for one plant, it doesn't necessarily fit the next plant that you might want to implement within. So it creates some scaling issues with integration. The data is different from plant to plant. So really, it's about working on that foundational process first before moving into, as you said, data is also really important there, but before putting AI on top of that. So start with your process, make sure you have the good data to support that, and then move from there to your AI implementation, and always be thinking about how you can scale it across before just implementing something specifically for one plant.
Under this pressure for AI, Heather, I've seen so many companies I've visited almost running before they can walk. They're so desperate to deploy AI that they don't think about the foundation that they've got to work on top of. Is that your experience again?
Yes, absolutely. I think sometimes we just want to move very quickly to prove value. And then what we find is that we've proved value in a very small use case, but really if you want to leverage the value of AI, and there is significant cost with AI, that you need to make sure that there's really good business value behind it, and you reimagine your business process to support that.
Mohit, I'm sure you've come across this in plenty of organizations you've worked with. Talk me through some of the things you found when companies are trying to scale up.
Mark, completely agree with Praveen and Heather here. I've had a privilege of working at different industries, from pharmaceutical to heavy equipment manufacturing, to commercial CPGs, and across all the industries, what I've seen is, where manufacturing lack is the handoffs most of the issues that we see today has been ingrained in the manufacturing culture that for so long, because things happen in silos. There has been a change management that has been going on forever. Be it you talk about lean implementations, when you talk about upgrading the ERP systems, upgrading into expanding the tech into MES. Every time we did something like that, we ran into challenges because everything happens in silos, that the finding the right data streams to make those systems work as they should makes it harder. And then going back to Heather's point about the data availability and the processes not being streamlined, that has been the eh, right, I would say, theme across the board that I've seen. So completely, I think that's what's happening with manufacturing.
All of this, of course, isn't happening in a technology vacuum. Most manufacturers have spent years invested in different enterprise and operational platforms, yet these investments have not necessarily created connected ways of working. Manufacturers already operate highly complex ERP, MES, PLM, supply chain environments. So why do operational workflows remain so fragmented despite years of digital investment? I'll start with you, Heather, this time, if that's okay.
Sure. I think one of the main reasons that the digital investment in the modernized systems, we're trying to move as quickly as we can. We hear all this hype about AI and how important it is to move forward, but we don't focus on truly connecting the workflow between those systems. So between ERP, between your MES systems, your QMS systems, and the shop floor, we're frequently look to again implement specifically for one plant need, or maybe within a plant, even just one process. And when we do that, we leave manufacturing with systems that are fragmented or not streamlined in a process way that we can apply data and AI in a more value-added way. They often talk about when you're looking at building AI, you should be focused on end-to-end workflow. Right, so it's not just about end-to-end workflow within a quality system, but end-to-end workflow across the manufacturing process for supply chain, and making sure that the systems, the MES systems, connect with that, and that's where you're really going to get the real value, is when you focus on that end-to-end workflow.
Okay, I see you nodding there. You agree with Heather on that point?
Every bit, single bit, what she just said. What I tell everyone, at the manufacturing floor is, and I think Mark, you said it, that try to walk before you start running. I think within manufacturing there has been quite a bit of a disconnect from top down to bottoms up reality. Top down is the leaders see productivity improvements through digital strategy, and that's what they want to tap into. But then the bottoms up reality is that the systems are still having technical debt. They have been so much fragmented. The handoffs are bad. And in most cases, I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, I used to work for a pharmaceutical company, and we were trying to commission a automated inspection machine. We spent the money, we thought of that this would go great as once it commissions. What we found out is that it led to a very high false negative. Now, anybody who is related to the pharmaceutical industry knows that a false negative leads to high bills, because then you have to do a lot of compliance checks. You cannot just put those vials back into the production. So it's a high risk there. And what we found out eventually doing the root cause was that our process itself was not streamlined enough to be able to or wasn't matured enough to be able to match the requirement for digitization. And that's where, whereby I was nodding the head to Heather, is like every single bit she said is like, before you go into applying a digital technology, make sure that processes are streamlined If your processes are bad, you are just putting them on steroids through the digitization strategy, and that's only going to create more chaos, not the productivity.
Praveen, it's difficult going further sometimes. Sometimes everything's been said, but anything to add to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would vigorously agree with the challenges that Heather and Mohit are laying out. But there is emerging technology and solutions that help us create an orchestration layer. I think what we're all starting to realize is that, look, at the end of the day, for manufacturers, this multi-system environments are not going to go away. They're acquiring. I mean, I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and they said, "Oh, we have 35 ERPs, and we have a long-term plan of consolidation." And I said, "So how long-term is long-term?" And I said, "Oh, that's going to take me 5 years. How much will you consolidate to? We plan to bring 35 down to 25." That's great. But it's not going to help you get to this utopian point about where we will be. It's purely consolidated. So this over-the-top orchestration across systems is what's going to help drive the end-to-end flows that Heather and Mohit are talking about. It cannot be done by connecting the systems. We have to elevate the work to run on this over-the-top system. And we built a platform called AI Next Platform, Topaz AI Next, which is really help driving this orchestration agenda. Now, when you bring up the business into this layer, then you suddenly start becoming more agile. Flows are easier to manage, change is easier to manage, and AI becomes more contextual and gets the data that they need for powering more use cases in a repeatable manner. So we kind of see this orchestration, and you will hear this word a lot in the next 40 minutes from me as well, is because we see that this is the play that will help enterprises truly scale and adopt faster than before. Mark?
Thank you for that. We've already touched on the evolution of AI, which brings us to a term, that's now entering almost every technology conversation I have, and that's agentic AI. There's considerable interest in the concept, but also some understandable confusion about what it means in an industrial environment. So, Praveen, the term agentic AI is increasingly appearing in industrial discussion. So, in practical manufacturing terms, what does agentic AI mean, and how does it differ from conventional automation?
So first of all, the industry, the software industry, and I'm part of that industry, is also responsible for creating hype. And I'm sometimes pained by the hype that we created ourselves, right? What was traditionally automation, which is deterministic automation, helps drive a certain productivity. That's about what you can do in straight through processing. A lot of people have taken good programs, 25 to 30% productivity straight through processing, etc. But it has a limit, and that's what it was. And RPA was all about deterministic. We've, kind of people have just made that the RPA plus plus is now agentic, and I think that's completely missing the point. We must see agentic AI as the ability to orchestrate, reason, apply intelligence on signals across supply chain landscapes, for example, and drive an execution agenda. It's really about moving to autonomous operations, but we determine via how we prompt and design those agent ecosystems on how autonomous can it be, depending upon the process, the enterprise, the factory, or any such context. So we must differentiate the automation being deterministic to agentic being intelligence and reasoning oriented. And unless we differentiate that, we're probably just creating more hype around agentic without really delivering, without it delivering to its promise. And again, it'll go all over the place.
Hype then. Hype, Mohit. Agentic AI, is it hype? What are your thoughts on it? I think you're muted, Mohit.
My apologies. I would say I completely agree with Praveen. Right now, there is a hype around what the agentic AI can do for manufacturing, but there's a lot of readiness that needs to go in there to be able to hand over the um, manufacturing to these agents to be able to perform those functions. the biggest challenge right now, and I had recently had a white paper on this one as well, is about who owns the outcome of these agentic AIs, AI agents decisions. So far, we had humans on floor, and that looks for safety, that looks for quality, customer experience. And once these AI agents take over the manufacturing, who would own those outcomes in terms of if it leads to a catastrophic failure on a safety, you know, um, or the quality is being drained out, impacting customers' usability. So that those are the challenges that needs to thought through well before we go that route. Moreover, I think this is not like um, the goal again, going back to my previous point about having a disconnect between top down and bottom up reality, is that the top down would love to have the productivity through these agentic AI solutions, but the bottoms up problem is that we do not have the right talent and the readiness in terms of to be giving that baton to these agents where they can fully automate. I would say most companies needs to phase these into three different, I would say, stages, where the stage one needs to be heavily human dependent, teaching these systems, where going into stage two, and that's where the most of the time needs to be, where the systems can have majority decisions but still human in loop to ensure that they are in the right direction before we go into stage three of full autonomy. So we are, again, that's why I said I completely agree with Praveen that there's a hype of what they can do today versus what's possibility coming in next 3 to 5 years if we go that route of crawling, walking, and running.
Have a call in any experience of agentic AI, or is it something on your roadmap?
Yeah, I think just to give a practical example, so I think a lot of people do confuse AI with automation or think that they need AI in all cases with automation today with the hype around AI. But unlike conventional automation, which typically follows fixed rules and predefined process steps, agentic AI can handle more variable, ambiguous, and cross-functional situations. So for example, we might have a traditional automation that routes an exception ticket based on a static rule, right? An exception ticket based on a static rule. And if you were to look at that from an agentic standpoint, an agentic system could detect the delivery risk, right? Look at the actual ticket data, assess production constraints, take the information from the ticket, relate it to any past production issues that have occurred, look at operating procedures and how things have been repaired in the past, review supplier status, customer orders, all these different pieces together, and then trigger an escalation to the right team and actually track the resolution. So I think really the difference is that it does more than automating a task, right? It actually coordinates decisions between different data systems across that process. And that makes it extremely valuable to Corning because then we can leverage that kind of technology to help us make faster decisions, to have manufacturing stay up and running more steadily with less downtime ultimately, and that means more revenue for the company.
Yeah, excellent. Before we continue, then let's see what the audience told us in the opening poll. So if we can see those results, please, I'd be interested in those. Right. Only 8% then have successfully scaled AI across the enterprise. Is that a surprise to you, Praveen?
No, actually not. And we kind of seeing this, at an average across industries, we've seen more this number. The top number would have been more like 10, 12%. So it's not off. And so that's what's important, right? The question is, there are still, what is it, 69% of people who have started the journey. Talk about experimenting and some successful pilots done. So 69, 70% of the enterprises have started the journey of AI, but yet only 8% has moved to truly having something in production. We've got to fix that delta. Why are they missing out on that last leg? Is something that if we can help the enterprises, that's of great, tremendous value to unlock.
Heather, from your perspective, is it trust? What's stopping these success? Because again, I see so many people try these things. What stops it really moving? Is it if it goes wrong once, they don't want to try it again?
Well, I think the first thing is getting a stakeholder buy-in that something new and different can be attempted to solve the problem. And there is a lot of fear around AI today, right? There's a lot of fear that AI could potentially take away jobs, right? And manufacturing has had this for 100 years, right? Because before AI, it was automation and robotics. And how can these things take over what humans can do today? So there is a real fear in the organization around that, will AI replace me? And what we tell the organization is, look, you will not be replaced by AI. A famous economist once said this, but you will be replaced by someone that is using AI. Right. So it's more about, telling people that the human still needs to be in the loop, but getting a foundation of the people that are leveraging this technology, the process owners actually understanding that this could be extremely valuable to help them drive efficiency, to help with safety issues, and really incent them. Like, why would they use AI, right? Why would that help them in their daily work? And if you can get that change management going, then you can start down the journey of leveraging it to do some low risk areas and then move to slightly higher risk agentic AI. But you do have to start with the people. It's not the technology, right? It's the people that are the hard part.
Excellent. I best get us moving on. We're halfway through already, and we've got so much more to cover. So let's get the second poll going live, so to give the listeners time to get their answers in. So the second poll, we're asking, what are the biggest barriers preventing manufacturing AI initiatives from scaling successfully? So the same as before, several possible answers here. So please select the barriers that most closely reflect your experience. One of the themes running through the discussion so far, I think, is that manufacturers, do not simply need another isolated application. They need a way to coordinate decisions and actions across existing systems, functions, and workflows. So how can AI-driven workflow orchestration help manufacturers reduce manual intervention and improve operational decision-making across complex enterprise environments? Praveen, I believe you've got a case study for us to talk about here.
Yeah, we can talk through some examples. This is a very large manufacturing company in the critical aerospace and defense space. Large SKUs supporting critical aircrafts, both commercial and defense. So clearly, being on top of how the warehouses execute to their fulfillment is extremely important. And they're growing, they're scaling. There's a lot of investments going in that industry. So the problem statement really is that how do I scale, and can AI help me scale faster with lesser? So we started down this journey of a warehouse program. Now, typically, when you start with AI, many people tend to come to shared service functions, etc. But in this case, their biggest challenge to solve for was on warehouse transformation. When you think warehouse transformation, you think packages, right? Hey, I want to buy a parts product. I've got to improve how my warehouse pickers, how they get more efficient, etc. But the context of this enterprise is that they've got multiple lines of business. Some of think warehouse operations where have to. I'm sorry, I missed it. Yeah, people will have to manage multiple applications, log in different places, get the right information, and then be able to fulfill the orders. So we set out to create kind of an orchestration layer, Mark, Mohit, Heather, on top of their core ERPs and order management systems, etc. Nothing to rip and replace. We're just elevating the data out of those systems and orchestrating on an experience layer. And that experience layer now is a tablet for the warehouse picker. So he or she is walking around doing the things that you do from a picking perspective, scanning barcodes, etc. But now you have one common way of working, not multiple systems, not multiple product lines that you're toggling at different places. That's number one, just common experience layer. The warehouse team, they just love it because it's changed whether it's a web application or their tablet. Then we got agents to do a lot of validations in the back end. So what does the warehouse do? The picker has to confirm, check for inventory, and so on and so forth. Agentic AI in the background is doing a lot of those validations. So again, the warehouse picker is just getting that summary view and be able to quickly go and fulfill the order. And that's tremendous value that's being unlocked. Outcomes, we're talking about training times for warehouse associates come down by about 60, 70%. We're talking about warehouse productivity going up about 50%. We're talking about very happy warehouse associates because now they're not navigating a bunch of systems to get their job done, but that experience is much more richer. So this is an example of how do I bring AI to the shop floor, and it's all about getting, like you said, Heather, getting the people bought in and their experience improving helps enable a better way, helping available a better way of working is just getting them across the line on change management as well. A bit of an example, Mark.
Yeah, excellent. Mohit, any thoughts? We need to move on, but quickly, any thoughts on that, Mohit? Any observations?
No, I think I would say definitely spot on, Praveen. That's what I have been um, looking into. That the ERPs and the CRMs, these are now data nodes. These are not the systems by themselves. These are now more or less API connections into an orchestration layer that needs to bring all that together, that data together. So spot on there, Mark.
Yeah. Workflow orchestration. Then quickly, Heather, anything you've got to add?
No, I think it's been covered. We can move on.
Excellent. So the operational implications, are clearly important, but manufacturers must also understand, the wider commercial impact. Faster production or better decision making only creates its full value when it translates into better customer service, stronger margins, and healthier cash flow. So the question, again, I'll start first with you, Praveen. Many manufacturers are under pressure to improve responsiveness while also protecting margins and working capital. So how important is the connection between operational execution and order to cash performance becoming?
Yeah, I think, look, all of us who are looking for ways to scale AI, if we can find a front end revenue enhancing use case, we get business buy-in right away. And I can see that from Mohit and Heather's nods that we all are out there often making cases for where should AI be applied, and this becomes relatively easier for execs to see and fund and create the investments. So what are we doing? Again, that same complexity of ERPs and inventory points and factories really is about trying to create a digital twin that can address the order to cash cycle. So orders are coming in. There's some phenomenal data points. Did you know, we see some research and we see some experiences ourselves that there's about a 5 to 15% of lost orders for most enterprises, particularly the mid-tier ones, when 80% of the time they did have the inventory to fulfill. But it is just that a lot of orders out there are not getting prioritized, addressed, or have the right information for the sales reps to quote effectively on and then be able to drive that conversion and sales closure. So we're helping enterprises leverage agentic AI to saying, think of all the way the quotes come in, right? Requests come in. It's all unstructured. There's emails that will come in. Somebody will put it on some portal. Someone will send some attachments. Someone will send some engineering drawings if it's E2O. And how do you make sense of that unstructured information? Mine it, make it relevant for the sales rep, and then help agentically to do the CPQ validations in the backend systems, help them price it better, saying, hey, you know what? Here's intelligence for you. This customer bought it the last time at this price. or this contract has a volume discount. So if you offered it XYZ more in units, you could get them up to that discount tier and give them the benefit. And so you create these negotiation. All of these are AI aids to the CSR and to the sales reps, and that's helping improve conversion. A 10% lift in conversion is a 3% improvement in bottom line. Who doesn't want it? So it's a very exciting use case, and definitely value, but it has to be driven in the way we're thinking about it, agentically, as validations for the sales rep to become more effective.
Ever any experience then in improving responsiveness while you're protecting margins?
Yeah, I think a lot of our use cases for improving margin and growing revenue are really, we focus on using AI to help us forecast demand, right? To understand really getting what to manufacture at what point in time so that we're not overinflating our inventory levels. And then when it comes to our procurement processes, right? How do we make sure that we are holding cash and paying cash out, paying when we need to, but not paying too early? So using detection to help us understand where humans might be doing things that are breaking our cash process. And then the really important one for us, and this is not generative AI, but using traditional computer vision and machine learning technologies to help us identify defects in the product so that we can remove humans from the having to inspect manually every piece of product that comes off the line, leveraging AI and traditional machine learning to define those, detect those defects, and then get that product out the door more quickly with higher quality. So really, I agree with everything that's said here around making sure that we're focusing on those use cases that actually generate revenue, reduce our unit price. Those things are what are top of mind for our executives, and making sure that we stay profitable.
Mohit, your thoughts?
I think Praveen has pretty much covered the use cases that's been driven across the board. But just to add to the list, some of the things that we are looking into, apart from the forecasting demand, and then also running through the agents in the CRM, is we had a use case where one of our business analyst would at least spend 2 hours each day looking into information to enable them to track parts. And just like Praveen said, we were losing orders for that. So definitely having an direct impact on the green dollars through these agents solutions helped us in getting traction with the leadership, and also enabled us into creating a virtuous momentum for other applications as well. Because I think most of my conversations I had around agents and the companies that are struggling where to start boils down to this one point, like, okay, where do we start looking into? What applications should we look into? And I always tell them, look into where you have the highest readiness in terms of data availability and systems readiness, but also high impact. That would create your virtuous momentum. And I think Praveen and Heather pretty much circle on those points as well.
Excellent. We've got one more poll to do. So before I launch that, I'm interested to hear what our listeners thought about the second poll. So if we bring the results up for the second poll. So the biggest barriers, difficulty demonstrating. Heather, I'll throw this one to you. Do you recognize any of those as barriers in the AI applications you've been developing at Corning?
I think measuring value is one of the huge issues, which is why looking at some of those revenue generating use cases is maybe a good place to start, because that actually shows value more quickly. But oftentimes, if we're improving an employee's productivity, that's where it gets really sticky when it comes to the value and how to measure that business value. And our leaders want to know what the value is of using AI, because AI is not cheap. right? As we talked about, we've got people out there token maxing in the industry to try to use as many tokens as possible, and then wonder why it's costing more to run AI than just leveraging a human to perform that task. So it's really sitting down and understanding how you can determine the business value, the return on employee for the efficiency gains with it, and so it is even more important that because there's all this hype around AI, that we focus on the business cases that actually generate that value, because you don't want to boil the ocean when you start, and you want to make sure that you're not spending money on these tokens and AI where it's not going to generate that value for you.
Praveen, then, so what do these results suggest manufacturers should prioritize first or focus on?
I would have actually thought from the poll that you would have seen a little more challenges around the data and the integration, which is good if that is starting to see a play. But like I promised, we keep coming back to orchestration as an agenda. That's definitely going to help scale. I want to bring up an important point Heather made about the cost of AI. It's clearly out there. It's a bit of an elephant in the room saying, is there an ROI, sustainable ROI? And one of the things that we have been espousing, and we built the capabilities in our AI Next platform, is to have it poly AI. What do we mean by that? First of all, it's different types of AI. Even on our discussion, we spoke about traditional ML to agentic to generative. I can argue that in an order to cash process, we need all kinds of AI. It's not one or the others. You don't have a new hammer called generative AI looking for a nail. So first of all, it's poly type of AI. And then we've also made it our business to saying I have to have options of various models that are available for people to leverage. We don't have to run after the biggest parameterized model, 5.0s, to go after a relatively simple problem of understanding an unstructured email with an attachment of a purchase request. So using the right type of model, the right type of scalability in ensembles becomes important in how you manage the cost associated with running in a sustainable way. And then we actually can see, hey, you know what? I'm going to flip one model and see what my token usage was. That sort of visibility, what we're starting to call as tokenomics, will help enterprises leverage it meaningfully so that business cases are not impacted in a way that we are running token max outs and cost amok, and structurally address the future. So it's an important element that you brought up, Heather, about the cost of AI.
Excellent. So it's now time probably for our final poll. So we've discussed the barriers to implementation, but we also want to understand, where the audience sees the greatest value. So the poll question is, which areas of the manufacturing organization are most likely to benefit from AI-driven workflow orchestration? So I won't read all the answers out, but if you could, we can start answering that poll now, and we'll come back to it towards the end of the webinar. In the meantime, I'll start with you, Mohit, on this one. One of the biggest challenges in manufacturing transformation is integrating disconnected systems and data sources. So how can manufacturers approach this without creating further complexity, disruption, or implementation risk?
I think, Mark, I already said this in my previous comment, but for those who are looking or just getting started on this journey, I always recommend looking for the use cases that has the highest readiness. So by what I mean by highest readiness is you have the data availability, cleanliness, and dependable data to start with, so that you don't run into retrofitting issues later on. But at the same time, look for the high impact as well. And by high impact, I do not just mean impact to the business, but sometimes adoption can also be a good KPI to enable or help building a long-term capability for the business. I think those are the two main KPIs that I go after when looking into the finalizing the use cases. So coming down to now the challenges, I think most of the businesses have one or the other. and how do you make that balance between the two becomes a challenge?
Excellent. I know, Praveen, we'll come to you in disconnected systems and data sources. You're going to talk to you about orchestration again, aren't you?
Okay, I'll try and skip the word now. I think it's this notion, Mark, that how ready are you? How ready is ready? Well, what we've learned sometimes the hard way over the last 18 months of seeing some of these programs go live is you would not have the perfect systems and APIs, everything ready before you can start on AI. So agility and innovation in how you get the data together, whether it's structured or unstructured, is extremely important. It's not about waiting for a 2-year program on bringing your data warehouse into shape, but it's about saying, hey, I've got a supply chain use case, maybe Mohit's driving, or a PLM use case that Heather's organization is driving. And what do I need as data for that? Let's go build the pipelines that are necessary for driving that, whilst a broader modernization, data agenda, etc., might be playing out. So we're kind of almost saying, do it in a way platformically that it's reusable, but don't try and wait for the perfect world, because that's not going to come for a while.
This readiness is an interesting idea, Heather, and I've been to lots of, and in fact, I've been to one big manufacturer in the US recently, and they run this AI readiness index, and he's been showing me how it's been going up month on month. Did you have to judge within Corning your AI readiness when you were ready? You know, did you have some sort of metric for this?
Yeah, we have, there's several different templates that are out there in the industry. Gartner has one, Forrester has one, an AI readiness matrix similar to what you would do if you're doing a data readiness assessment for analytics, right? So it really looks at things like governance. Do we have good master data? Do we have good ownership of processes? What does the security landscape look like? And taking that and assessing business to business, because Corning is multiple businesses, is key before we get started with any major initiative. And I do really want to highlight what Praveen just said about progress over perfection, though, because we in the world tend to want to be perfect before we implement. And I think in this world of AI, there's too many unknowns to be perfect or to wait for perfection. So it's really about starting with a high value workflow and then identifying a minimum set of systems, data, and things that you need to build that workflow, and then looking at the assessment of the maturity of those items in order for you to move forward. Don't wait for the maturity to be perfect or you'll never get started.
I suppose connecting systems is only part of the challenge, really, isn't it? Because manufacturers must also be able to interpret what is happening across their operations, quickly enough to make better decisions. So what role does real-time operational intelligence play in improving things like agility, predictability, and execution across manufacturing operations? And we'll stay with you, Heather, because while you're in full flow.
Sure. So real-time operational intelligence is essential because manufacturing performance is highly sensitive to timing. A problem that we identify too late will become much more expensive, right? As you're working through the manufacturing process, things get more expensive as you go further along in that process. So real-time intelligence will give us the ability to detect deviations early, understand likely downstream impact, and act before those issues cascade across production, inventory, logistics, etc. So we need to enable faster response to changes in demand, supplier delays, labor constraints, quality issues. So we improve predictability with continuous monitoring and highlighting risks before they become failures. So having that real-time intelligence is just really, really critical everywhere. The real benefit is not just that visibility, though, it's the actionable visibility, and that's where AI can come in and help. Because if we create that real-time intelligence and then we link that to, and I'm going to say the word, orchestration, then manufacturers can move from observing those operations to actually actively steering them in a more responsive way.
Mohit, talk about real-time operational intelligence then.
Yeah. What just Heather said spot on there, but I would just add that the goal of real-time operational intelligence is definitely not to just create a visibility, but what do we do with the visibility? You know, most of the companies have now I've seen is it's getting stuck in creating those visibility and thinking that we achieved the goal, but that's just a starting point. The real um, ROI comes when we can take that visibility and the real time um, alerts and be able to pivot quickly with the before the disruption actually happens. And if we are able to do that, that's when we are adding we create value for the business.
And really, that Praveen, that's the nub of the whole thing, isn't it? I've spent years and years writing about manufacturing, and since the advent of Industry 4.0, I think that everyone was talking about visibility, gaining visibility, and this is, we've got that now, but there's still so many manufacturers struggling to turn visibility into what we're calling intelligence. It's a big step for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big step. And since Heather adopted orchestration, I love the word progress over perfection. Here's an example of where it's been used very effectively and how important it is. So this is food manufacturing, and there are new regulations like FISMA in the US, where traceability becomes very important. Now this is a client, 14 factories producing food, which has recall challenges if not perfect. And if you recall it too late, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in fines. And we've seen some of those dramatic headlines, right, about recall X, recall Y. So this real-time intelligence of pallets taking finished goods to packers to retailers in visibility as just the start point, but then to be able to go down and do audits, quality audits, and be able to recall in within 4 hours as against 4 weeks, just dramatically reduces the potential risk of recall failures and impacts. And that's a real world example of how actionable it can be if you have the visibility. And in many such instances across different subsegments of the manufacturing industry. So yes, will actually help us do those scenario modelers and potential risk situations that can be actionable or at least alerted well to the right people to look at it.
Excellent. We've only got about 5 minutes left, so we'll do a quick fire round. So we've discussed technology, the integration challenges, the need to connect operational performance with commercial outcomes. So let's bring these three elements together and consider what success should actually look like. So looking ahead, what are the business and operational outcomes manufacturers should realistically expect from successfully implementing AI-driven orchestration? Praveen, your 1 minute answer.
I think first of all, it's building the clarity of what KPIs you want to influence, and sticking to the revenue and margin enhancing KPIs is the start point of delivering or finding what use cases you go after, and then what do we orchestrate agentically and otherwise to drive that straight through processing. That's what's going to help determine and be realistic about success.
Mohit, your quick answer to that.
I would say the future should be focusing on balancing between the pace of change versus the value generated through these systems. I think most of the companies where they're struggling right now is they have these use cases but are not able to show impact because they're either lagging adoption or being dead in the water because of the scalability. If you can have a much more collaborated workforce that can come together on these solutions that can create long-term visibility and action plan, that's where you're able to create value for the business.
And you, Heather?
Yeah, I think manufacturers should expect a mix of operational, financial, and organizational benefits, but they also should be realistic that that value comes from better execution rather than a single drastic breakthrough. So we should expect faster resolution, reduced downtime, improved schedule adherence, more on-time delivery and better coordination. But over time, this will create a stronger foundation for scaling AI because the models and agents will become embedded in repeatable workflows rather than sitting on the side as people begin to trust that the AI solution is actually working and able to do or take over some of those more mundane tasks from the humans.
One more question, but before we do that question, let's see if the poll's ready, because I was going to do the poll after the question. But if the poll's ready, let's quickly see now. So which areas of the manufacturing organizations are most likely to benefit from AI-driven workflow? Supply chains, no real surprise to me. But cross-functional enterprise decision-making. Does that surprise you, Mohit, from your experience?
No, actually. That in fact, this is spot on with what I was trying to say, that every use case needs to scale when it has support from cross-functional usability, or when it impacts the cross-functional usability. And I think this goes hand in hand with that thought.
What about you, Heather? I'm surprised that there's nobody for manufacturing operations and production.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised about that as well, because I think what we spoke about earlier around having individual processes in a plant or even within a business that has multiple plants. If they continue to stay disjointed and in their silos, then you will end up with slow movement forward of progress, slower innovation, slower resolution of issues, because we don't know where in the process something is broken. But leveraging AI, that you can connect all of those different sources together, like I talked about with the SOPs and the MES system and the ERP, that is really where the benefit comes from. So for sure, the cross-functional components too, right? Being able to tie HR data to finance data to other data in the IT systems. But having that ability to kind of cross-connect all of that information and come to faster decisions is really where I think that the benefit to manufacturing companies will be.
Yeah. Any surprises for you, Praveen? If you can remember the poll, it's disappeared now, but
I can remember and I can remember because I'm heartbroken. There was nobody picking up order to cash. But jokes aside, I think these are some great examples that Heather and Mohit mentioned as well, where you're driving. And if you see the narrative, it's really about end-to-end. My one last tier would be saying, how should enterprises go about doing this at scale? And our submission is that this should not be a point use case by use case, but a platformic way of going about scaling AI, building the right guardrails, keeping the right metrics and controls in place. And that's what we built the AI Next platform for. We are seeing enterprises leverage that and approach it in a platform-centric way to, folks like Heather, Mohit, you all want to encourage front-end innovation. You want your operators, you want your leaders to be able to drive innovation on the front end, find their own use cases, maybe design some themselves. But if you're able to do that on one common IT and platform ecosystem, you know that there are guardrails and controls that are in place that keep the enterprises focused on where the KPIs really are moving. So in summary, that's what I would leave it at, Mark.
Excellent. We're out of time, but I want to ask this last question. So a quick 30-second, 1-minute answer each. And, I'd like to ask each of you to leave the audience with some practical guidance. We put what 3 pieces of advice, but what's the main piece of advice would you give manufacturers attempting to scale AI across operational and commercial workflows? Praveen, let's begin with you.
Yeah, just what I ended up saying, approach it with a platform-centric view on scaling enterprise AI, finding the right use cases is my steer.
And Heather, your final takeaway.
Yeah, look, I'm a technologist, but I'm going to say start with workflow pain, not technology enthusiasm. So focus on those processes where delays, exceptions, and manual coordination are hurting business performance.
Excellent. Mohit, your key takeaway.
In addition to what just Heather said, I would say make sure that you are looking into legal and compliance angle as well when looking into these solutions, because retrofitting can actually be a pain in the longer run. So be sure that when you put the governance guardrails, you look into the legal and compliance angle as well.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Apologies to the people that sent questions in, but the conversation was so interesting, I didn't have time to squeeze any in. Praveen, Heather, and Mohit, thank you for sharing your experience and insight. And, I think we've covered a great deal, from the difficulty of moving beyond isolated pilots to the growing role of agentic AI, workflow orchestration. That's in my lexion now. Real-time intelligence and the connection between manufacturing execution and commercial performance. So thank you as well to everyone who joined us and contributed to the polls and submitted questions. And we hope you found that discussion useful. So on behalf of Manufacturing Day today in Infosys, thank you for watching and goodbye.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Praveen.